Hello, my name is Mike Henson, and I'm a member of the Somerville Human Rights Commission. And I would like to welcome you to our celebration of the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Each year, as the Commission organizes this event, we take time to reflect upon different aspects of Dr. King's message and how they may resonate with current events. The death of George Floyd at the end of May galvanized communities across the world to peacefully protest in his name, in Breonna Taylor's name, in Ahmaud Arbery's name, and in the name of all Black people throughout history who have been judged by the color of their skin and not the content of their character. To say, no lives matter until Black lives matter. This year's topic was reflecting history, and we sent prompts to students in Somerville schools to reflect on how the teachings and examples of Dr. King are still meaningful today. First graders from the Brown School will let you know what advice they think Dr. King would give to our new president and all Americans about issues we face in today's world. Another prompt asked if you have actively supported a movement for social justice or participated in a demonstration. How has your experience allowed you to gain a deeper understanding of the work of Dr. King? Bhavika Kalia, a sixth grader at John F. Kennedy School, will deliver a poem she wrote about the issues that she sees in our world and how she hopes the words of Dr. King can help us make a positive impact. Boston poet, educator, and mediator Art Collins will perform a piece he composed just for this event. Kedrick Roy, a doctoral candidate at Harvard University, educator and advocate for racial and social justice, will share his thoughts about participating in social justice movements. You will also hear from Mayor Joe Curtatone and school committee member Andre Green. And Marcus Santos, a musician, educator, and familiar face from past celebrations, has created an original video. Naturally, we wish that we could be sharing this moment with you in person, as we have for several years in the auditorium of East Somerville Community School. Nonetheless, we on the Human Rights Commission are very excited to share this program with you, to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his legacy, and how we can incorporate his message into our lives and our efforts to make sure all humans are granted their fundamental rights. We hope you enjoy the program.
This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to...
Welcome to the City of Somerville's annual Martin Luther King Jr. Day event. Thank you for tuning in to watch. I also want to thank the Somerville Human Rights Commission, the Somerville Public Schools, and the Health and Human Services Department for working together to find a way to safely mark the day and celebrate the life of Dr. King. At the end of the Selma to Montgomery March in 1965, Martin Luther King gave a speech in which he said, "We must come to see that the end we seek is a society at peace with itself, a society that can live with its conscience." As he made clear many times, the kind of peace Dr. King was talking about wasn't merely civility or an absence of conflict. In Stride Towards Freedom, a book King wrote chronicling the Montgomery bus boycott, he said, "True peace is not merely the absence of tension. It is the presence of justice." It's an idea he touched on again in Letter from Birmingham Jail when he wrote about the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. What Dr. King was pointing out is that living in a society free of conflict may look like peace to some, But when peace comes at the expense of equal rights and advancing racial and social justice, that is not true peace. Avoiding the tough work of creating a more just society does not bring peace to those who are fighting to be seen as equal. It does not bring peace to someone who has been discriminated against or made to feel unsafe because of their race, gender, sexuality, gender expression, immigration status, religion, or physical or mental abilities. Those who benefit from the status quo are often reluctant to see the system that benefits them change, and will label calls to re-examine our society and institutions as divisive or too political. But throughout our history, the value placed on maintaining the status quo has been used as an argument to deny pushes for equal rights and fights against oppression. We're often told not to talk about sensitive subjects like race, but without those conversations, nothing will change. It can be uncomfortable to talk with a friend or family members about why a remark they made is racist. But by having that conversation, you're hopefully prompting someone to re-examine their own biases and rethink their actions. Government also has a role to play. At every level of government, we should be looking critically at laws and policy and thinking about who they truly serve and who, even unintentionally, they hurt. We can all play a part in reaching a positive peace and a more equitable and just society. The work isn't always easy, and it will almost certainly be uncomfortable at times. But no progress is made when we ignore a problem to avoid conflict. So let's commit ourselves to do that work. Let's commit ourselves to hold ourselves up to the highest ideals of America, of being a diverse, tolerant, compassionate, civil, and just society. Thank you.
With this faith, we will be able to transform. So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners, will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood? I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed. this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a throne of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice.
Martin Luther King served as tied to new presidents and Americans too, and the discrimination that affects the black people. All Americans should get the same job and school. Martin Luther King teaches us to love others and not to hate, because for that we shall love each other. All people are the same, so we shall not judge people by color for their skin. When people do protest, they should do it, not violent protest.
I think Martin Luther King would tell Joe Biden to tell police not to kill, white police to not kill black people.
I would like, my name is Anish, and I am in first grade in Miss Cooney's class, and I would like Martin Luther King to tell the president to make sure everyone has equal rights.
Martin Luther King Jr. would say that the president in coronavirus. Martin Luther King Jr. would say that the president help the planet. Martin Luther King Jr. would say that the president
His advice would be give everybody a chance of being president. Don't give up, Joe Biden. You can do it. Bye.
be the best you can. Martin Luther King Jr., like Joe Biden, to do what he did to help the world to be a better place.
If Martin Luther King Jr. was alive, I think he would tell Joe Biden, I think you should make the world a better place. What do you think, Mom? Okay, I guess I'm finishing this video now.
That one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners, will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood? I have a dream. One day.
Hello, my name is Bhavika Kali and I'm a student in 6th grade at the John F. Kennedy School. I've written this poem to talk about the issues that are in our world today. I've chosen what I believe are the 3 most important to address. This poem includes what I think Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would say to our world. There are also quotes that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had once said. These quotes are the ones that I think will match most with the 3 issues I have included. The poem is titled, A Beacon of Justice in a World That Needs It. I shall begin now. If you look at our world, it is difficult to see what is begging to be seen. Our world is not the same. Most scars have healed from the past, but new ones have been engraved that show what the scars before have shown. A world only known by us, those who see. If you were to see all the things that have changed in our world, you would be amazed. It's continued to improve because of the progress for justice. But instead of moving forward, we don't move at all. First, to understand what I am about to say, you must see the issues that last in our world. We have racism, discrimination, death, murder, inequality, bias, stereotypes, and civil rights not being given. These are not all the issues, these are only a few, but there are many, many more. As you read these issues, you might think that these have always been in our world. And yes, you are correct. These have always been hiding here. These problems are so severe and dangerous that this is why I choose to speak about them today. Now that these issues have been addressed, we shall see what has been said about them. Dr. Martin Luther King has saved America more than once with his words. Let us hope he can save it again, showing us how to make things right in our world. As we begin looking into the depths of our world, we see something like no other. We see violence that has been coming into many communities. This violence has led to murder, and the murder has led to more violence. Then a ripple effect once more. The police and others who have power work to control and stop the voice of the people. As we think about this, we must think about what he would say. A riot is the language of the unheard. This is why we continue to do so today, because people are still unheard. Next, I will continue, not about what we do see, but what we do not. And we do not see many things in our world, but what we do not see the most is equality and love. In our world, people are not all the same, and that leads others to think that there is no need to treat them the same. This is why we need equality, and we need love to build that equality. That is what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would have said. He would tell us that with love, we could change our world. We could help change others to see equality. Just like he had once said, love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. Lastly, I will tell you the issue that is most important. It is silence. Not standing up and fighting for what you believe. It is the most dangerous way to not even try. Because of the fact that others need that support and it is not being given, I ask you today to not be silent and use your voice and raise awareness, because that is what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had said once. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. I believe these words will change our world again. This time we will help because we can. Thank you for hearing my perspective and my voice today. I hope that as this world continues to grow, each of us will too. We will make our voices heard, we will fight for justice, and we will do it together.
We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created.
Martin Luther was the king of American civil rights. Nonviolence was a strategy he used to fight for freedom. We shall overcome someday. The struggle wasn't just black and white. It included the spectrum of all hues in between. He had a kaleidoscopic dream that little children would not be judged by the color of their skin. He spoke of emancipation, encountered civil unrest, encouraged protest through demonstration. Outspoken, not silent, he acknowledged the limitations of riots. He said, "Rioting is not revolutionary, but reactionary, because it invites defeat." Do you agree? Or can we agree to disagree? Are these states united, or is it lawfully enforced by decree? I was born in 73, and this society keeps trying to take my dignity. I still believe in the philosophy of the good Reverend Doctor and actively supported the Black Panther Party led by Huey P. Newton. The two were not mutually exclusive. They both fought for the same goal, with varying political views, vibing in the same groove, the same trenches. Can you imagine the pain of being beaten, hosed, bitten by dogs, or lynchings? Can you imagine the pain of feeling defenseless? The pain linked to racism, the pain linked to hate, the pain linked fences, these barriers we need to escape. Tear down, not mend. Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. So love for no reason, My next words I've etched in stone. I have decided to stick with love because hate is too great a burden to bear. America is my home, mother to son. But life for people who look like me ain't been no crystal stair. I live with no regrets, so value love, trust, forgiveness, and respect. I am the brother who sings the blues while satellites circle the world like vultures, broadcasting melancholy news. If Dr. King was alive today, he would say, our nation is bleeding from community policing, but black hearts keep beating, keep believing. We are having hard times, but keep breathing. Our spirits are strong-winded, so I speak like there's an exclamation after every sentence, and I've declared war in a story that never ended. We are not disposable. We got a hip in our hop. These words are quotable. That's how I feel. And the cure for this sickness is the medicine's wheel. 4 quadrants. Body, getting to know each other. Mind, deciding if we can trust. Emotion is revealing ourselves. And the spirit requires us showing up for each other. Dr. King, I am hopeful as the caged bird who sings. But at the end of the day, my black life matters, and I remain a king.
Deeply rooted in the American dream, I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream.
Okay, but now we gotta be quiet. Okay, I think what Martin Luther King would give to Joe Biden as a speech would to make sure he's working on the vaccine, like to tell the people who are making the vaccine even better, so then the virus couldn't spread as much. And so then, if it didn't spread as much, not as many people would get sick anymore, and less people would start, less of the virus that was, and less people would get it, and less of it would be spreading. And if less of it was spreading, it would be easier to go outside and go play and stuff. We could a bit more of us can be at playgrounds and stuff, and we can do a bit more than we did a long time ago. So, and I think that's kind of like the speech that he would give to Joe Biden.
Sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners, will they be able to sit down together at the table of brothers?
If Martin Luther King was still around, he would say to the new president, don't give up.
I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat.
Think of a solution to stop this. Make decisions. Be kind, respect others. Be a friend to those who have been bullied. Be strong. suck the earth, be fun to everyone, and don't just care about yourself, care about the world. Don't give up. Have hope for the future. And I already said
Injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom.
Hi, Miss Roy. I think Martin Luther King today would give the advice of to have better health care to those who are the poor, and have whoever has the virus get the shot. And yeah, bye.
One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to go.
I think Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would say to Biden, do your best job. Don't use violence. Treat people equally. Everyone is equal.
And sisters and brothers, I have a dream today.
My name is Kedrick Roy, and I'm a PhD candidate in American Studies at Harvard University. In this talk, which I'm calling Beyond Demonstration, I'll discuss additional ways of participating in social justice movements that extend beyond 2020's summer of protests. My appeal is directed toward two kinds of people: those in our community who haven't actively supported a movement for social justice but would like to get involved, and two, those who are already active in our community but are looking for other ways to build on the great work that you began or continued last year. If you haven't supported a movement for racial and social justice, I'm here to tell you three things. One, there are more avenues for social advocacy than you might think. Two, it's really not all that scary. And three, you already have what you need to get started. As you may have heard from the many news commentators following the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, and the corresponding upsurge of grassroots activism that ensued, the United States during the summer of 2020 was, in some ways, a mirror image of the United States of the 1960s. While such comparisons may appear frightening because they underscore the lack of sustained progress we've made toward racial equity in our country over the last 60 years, I also want to suggest that they point to the ways in which the words of Martin Luther King Jr., perhaps the greatest activist and orator of the 1960s, may be just as relevant today as they were for his listeners back then. As I said in my talk last July during Somerville's Reading Frederick Douglass Together event, my biggest concern after the protests subsided was that people would walk away from the struggle for racial and social justice to resume life as normal. I was afraid we'd return to our cookouts, our book clubs, our bowling nights, our family gatherings, and forget all about the inequities that continue to separate us from King's vision for a multiracial America that is equitable, peaceful, and safe for everyone. Our aim for 2021 should not just be to put 2020 behind us, but to ask ourselves how we can learn from the underlying tensions that 2020 brought to the forefront. Now is not the time to let up. Though we may eventually get beyond the threat of COVID-19, there's still no remedy for racism, no vaccine for viciousness, no medicine for microaggressions, no salve for discrimination based on sex or race, and no bipartisan cure for climate change, which has already been negatively impacting people of color more than any other group. Though these issues have accelerated in recent years and have come to a head beneath the shadow of coronavirus, the systemic problems I just named have been with us for decades, or even centuries. You may have survived COVID-19, but if you're classified as a minority, if you're poor, if you're a woman, or if you are a member of the LGBTQ community, if you're Black or if you're brown, you find yourself once again locked in a struggle that social distancing can't solve. If you ever needed to think twice before going on a jog through your neighborhood, if you've ever seen others cross the street as you approached, if you've ever been pulled over because your vehicle matches the description, if you've ever had to give your kids the talk, then you know what I mean. For folks who have been minoritized, there's no returning to life as normal. Racism is still a global pandemic and a worldwide health crisis. So what of all this? Where do we go from here? If you're not a person of color, how can you stand with people in marginalized groups? What does it mean to think of new solutions to old problems that we've never really solved? Do we just give up on the struggle for racial justice because it's hard or uncomfortable? Martin Luther King Jr. warns us about this kind of fatalism, which he says involves resigning yourself to the belief that whatever happens must happen, and all events are determined by necessity. He warns us against surrendering to the impression that racism is and always will be a fundamental feature of American life. He argues that we should not surrender to what we think is the inevitability of racial injustice because it's easy or convenient. What should we do instead? King says the antidote to fatalism lies in developing our capacity to accept the finite disappointment and yet to cling to infinite hope. In other words, we must maintain our hope in the face of the seemingly insurmountable circumstances we face. Even when we get tired of not seeing progress, we have to believe that our persistent efforts will lead to eventual change. We can't walk away. Though Martin Luther King Jr. certainly did not have a pandemic in mind, he would probably ask us to leave our old ways behind and to embrace what he calls dangerous unselfishness. He implores us to, like the Good Samaritan, be concerned with people who are hurting, regardless of the danger it may pose to our comfort, our social position, or even our lives. For King, when we see racial or social injustice, we need to ask ourselves not what will happen to me and my family if I stand up to people who perpetuate inequality in my workplace or school, but rather, what will happen to those who are impacted by these injustices if I don't speak up? We need to ask ourselves not what will happen to me and my job if I call for equitable policies in my organization, but what will happen to those who have been stuck in a permanent economic underclass if I don't advocate on their behalf? It's not about worrying about what will happen to me in my position of relative privilege if I push for inclusive laws in this country, but rather, what will happen to those who have been denigrated, disenfranchised, disabled, disparaged, and dismissed if I don't speak up and use my voice for their benefit? Following King's example, we too need to think about the ways we could cultivate a kind of dangerous unselfishness, to stand in solidarity with people who are different from us. We need to foster what Peruvian theologian Gustavo Gutierrez calls a preferential option for people in oppressed groups. We need to always be thinking about how we can go out of our way to show folks kindness in our workplaces, in our houses of worship, and yes, in Market Basket. Don't be afraid to nod and smile. Your gesture may be appreciated even if it is not acknowledged or returned. In this way, we can begin to renew the spirit of what King has called the beloved community of mutual respect, admiration, and love in our city. This brings me back to where I started. Where do we go beyond our summer of protests to change the broken systems that have been operating in our country for centuries? How else can we maintain our commitment to the cause of racial and social justice? It's far too easy to go back to life as usual until the next time a person of color is assaulted or killed. Part of the point of protesting is to disrupt the ordinary and to reframe how people see the world. How can we continue uniting in interracial, interfaith, and international coalitions to build on the energy the protests have generated to bring about change and to oppose the human tendency to forget and move on. King understood from his days organizing marches, to preaching in congregations, to negotiating with presidents, that protesting may be the spark to create the change we need in the world. But he also knew we couldn't stop there. Instead of needing to respond to acts of racial and social injustice, what if people who have privilege inverted the paradigm and begin by proactively using their unique talents, gifts, and connections to limit and perhaps even reverse the effects of injustice in the first place? This reversal of thinking and action is at the heart of what Dr. King would call being creative and active in our solutions, perhaps the highest compliment he paid to any movement for social justice. To make this more concrete for our city, if you are a songwriter, how can you write songs of encouragement, lament, or inspiration for people to listen to after the protesting is done? If you are a student, how can you get more involved in our community and use your skills to benefit those who need it? If you're an artist, how can you use your medium to bring attention to social injustices? If you are a business leader, how can you use your success to advocate on behalf of women and people of color and to seek them out for job opportunities? If you work at a startup, how can you take steps to bring in more diverse voices from the very beginning? If you work in construction, how might you organize a group of friends to serve folks in our city who could use your expertise? Though the chaos we endured during the summer of 2020 was incredibly painful, I began asking these questions of myself as an educator, a former operations officer, and a strategic planner. I used my background in these fields to design, organize, and teach 2 free courses on race, diversity, and inclusion for the City of Somerville through the Somerville Museum and a network of local churches called City on a Hill over a 13-week period last summer. These courses address 2 central questions about the history of race and racism in the United States. How do we get to where we are, and where do we go from here? Each week, I and our incredible team of volunteers who range from community and business leaders to graduate students and educators met virtually with over 100 of you across both courses to wrestle with what racism and anti-racist initiatives could mean for our diverse community. Together, we created a space where folks didn't have to be afraid to make mistakes or say the wrong thing, so we could later engage people of all colors in our community with compassion and confidence. I'd love to hear people tell me about how they've been applying the concepts we discussed to their daily work. A middle school teacher, for example, said that the course gave her the language she needed to handle the issues of racism she's identified at her school. Other folks have taken the syllabi and concepts we discussed in the course to their workplaces, and they've been revising hiring practices and policies. Our alumni have even launched anti-racist book clubs of their own, and national media attention brought this project to new audiences across the country. What I'm saying to you is that you need to start something in this community today, because your contribution will count, no matter its scope or scale. I encourage you to take a few moments to reflect on your strengths, then partner with the wonderful people, city agencies, and organizations we have here in Somerville to get the project off the ground. You might not lead one of the greatest movements for civil rights in the 20th century like Martin Luther King Jr. You might not feel that you are as graceful as Mother Teresa or as gifted as Gandhi. You might not write a song like Bob Dylan or paint a larger-than-life mural like our local artist Imagine. You might not feel comfortable speaking in public or writing an op-ed, but your life is a gift. And you need to use what you have, all you have, to help make our community and this country more empathetic, more compassionate, and more humane for your children and mine. King's goal in the 1960s was to redeem the soul of America from what he called the interlocking evils of militarism, racism, and poverty. So go get involved. Let's finally make history
of our
our
nation
future.
into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together.
Welcome to World Percussion Ensemble 2020 Hip Hop.
Recibimos a Somerville High. ¡Hey! Recibimos a Somerville High. ¡Cumbia!
Sejam bem-vindos ao Somerville High. Hey!
Hi, my name is Seville, and I want to talk to you about Martin Luther King. To be honest with you, I can't do this entire video without having a script because when I think of him, there are just so many great things that I want to say that I had to condense it all into words. No matter who you are or what you believe in, you can't ignore the fact that Martin Luther King was a part of something amazing for this country. On January 15th, he was born, and sometimes I think about if his parents had any idea of how many great things he would go on to do. But sadly, 39 years later, he was killed. One of my favorite quotes of his is that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The presidential inauguration of Joe Biden is coming up just 2 days after his birthday. And I believe that he would say to Joe Biden that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Martin Luther King was a smart man to come up with that statement because he was able to speak volumes with just 8 words. When I think of this prompt, I couldn't help imagining Joe Biden and Martin Luther King sitting and talking and laughing together. I think that Martin Luther King Jr. would tell Joe Biden a couple of things. First off, that he has an obligation to the people in this country, that he is their leader and he needs to listen and help make life better for those who have been and continue to be oppressed. Today we have seen the racial injustice against people of color more than ever, but we have also begun to fight to change that more than ever. But I also think that he would tell Joe Biden that is going to be hard, because so many people in this country are going to disagree with him and even come to hate him. But that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. He would tell Joe Biden that as the President of the United States, he needs to fight not only for the people who need him, but for justice itself in this country. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tenula Obudeko. I am from Nigeria. If MLK was here today, I would want him to touch on the education system not favoring immigrants. As an immigrant, I came to the United States for a better education system because my country did not have enough to make us strong in the field we plan to study in, such as engineering. Moving here was like a dream, so I had to put in the work to be outstanding among my mates. Because MLK said the function of education is to teach one to think intensively and critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. But when I was applying to college, I found out I was unable to get a lot of financial help because of where I am from. It was very disappointing because MLK said, education without moral is like a ship without a compass, merely wandering nowhere. If we're to move forward as a society, we need to do it as one people. So if MLK was here today, he will advise our upcoming president to change so it can benefit our leaders of tomorrow. Black or white, Hispanic or Asian, no matter where you're from, you won't be judged by that, but you shall be judged by your hard work and morals and characters. Thank you.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners, will they be able to sit down together at the table of brothers?
Thank you all for joining us today. I would like to give a special thank you to everyone who made this event possible and contributed in different ways. I'm Lara Versari. I've been part of the Somerville Human Rights Commission for about 3 years, and I'm excited to see it expanding and gradually regaining the ability to be a powerful instrument for the community. Last year has been especially hard on so many in our community, and we encourage all of you to join forces, to deepen conversations, to take part and take action to tackle concrete issues, and together keep our focus on human rights. The Commission is actually looking for new members and volunteers on board, and regardless of your field of expertise, everyone's contribution is welcome and appreciated, as we would like all voices to be heard and powerful. Speaking of contributions, for the ones of you who can show their support financially, we encourage donations to the food pantry in Somerville. We are very, very grateful to the staff and volunteers who have been serving our community and continue to do so. Thank you. Let's work all together in solidarity.
Free at last, thank God Almighty.